to A Therapist, a Buddhist, and You, brought to you by the Recovery Collective in Annapolis, Maryland. Today, we are exploring the transformative power of breath awareness and its profound impact on our mental well-being. Here on this podcast, we journey through self-discovery and a collective solution to all things health and wellness. My name is Luke DuBois, who happens to be a therapist, and joining me on this enlightening adventure is my co-host, Theravada Buddhist meditation and life coach, Zal Mal.
Hello, everyone. Here's Zal. What's up, Luke?
Hey, Zal. Things are good, and thanks for all of you for tuning in and joining our collective community. As always, like, comment, share, do all that good stuff. We do greatly appreciate your support. We like to call it our handshake agreement. We provide you with these deep dives of valuable information, and you leave a like, comment, subscribe, and of course, most importantly, share our podcast with others. If you'd like to monetarily thank us, we of course will welcome that too, as we now have a donate button. Remember, it's through our collective efforts that we can uncover solutions to all things related to health and wellness. So, Zal, in our busy lives, it's so easy to overlook the significance of something as simple and fundamental as our breath. Yet the breath holds incredible wisdom, serving as a gateway to understanding the nature of our minds and finding inner peace, well, potentially. So, inspired by the teaching of Buddhism, today's discussion revolves around the enlightening article that you wrote, Zal. How about that? So, Zal, you wrote an article or blog, whatever you want to call it, some time ago, and I think it's we talked about doing this on the podcast before, and try to how are some ways that it's obviously an awesome topic, but how do we simplify it and make sense not just for the listeners, but me too. And you can check out all of Zal's writing on our website, the Recovery Collective, and that's recoverycollectivemd.com. We'll share that in the episode link. But yeah, so what I want to do, Zal, is let's have you read. It's about the breath and breath awareness, and we'll have you read two of the paragraphs. I'll ask you some questions about it. We'll talk about it, and then we'll read the last two paragraphs and have an awesome episode about breath awareness. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. It'll be interesting and fun, and I'm curious how it's going to unfold because I don't think we've ever done it. And also, it's a strange thing to read my own writing. Writing is just like a different realm. So, but I do want to say some disclaimer about breath. That first of all, my background is Theravada Buddhism. The breath work, they are yoga-related breath work, and then the breathing. I just wanted to mention that this has more to do with the meditative practice, specifically Theravada practice. And there is that concept of three characteristics of existence: impermanent, unsatisfactory, and the absence of self. So that's the framework that I'm looking at. Although I do have Buddhist background, I'm not like technically advanced or monastically advanced, but I do have the backbone, which I'm always going to be a lifelong learner, student of. And Buddha delivered this thing called Anapanasati Sutta, which is translated as the mindfulness of the breathing discourse. And there are 16 steps in that, very specific. So that's my backbone. And it's like a ongoing, for the rest of my life kind of learning. That's my reference. So I just wanted to clarify that when I say about breathing, it's not about fire breath or box breathing or controlling the breathing and, all these things, but it's more about finding the true nature of the way things are through breath.
Yeah, great setup. And this is titled The Knowing Breath, and you can check all of Zal's reading. Once again, we have a blog section, but you can also check all his readings through his About Us on the Recovery Collective website as well. So, all yours, Zal.
So this is how it begins. Breath is always a good place to start when learning about the nature of the mind. Breathing is an interesting phenomena because it can easily switch between there is the one who is doing the breathing and there is an activity of breathing without the one doing it. In other words, one can jump in and take charge of the breathing in a way that he or she wishes at any given moment. Or one can be busy doing other daily things and the breathing takes care of its own thing and does all the work by itself to sustain life. Realistically speaking, however, if one were to be fully in charge and were required to consciously breathe every single moment to stay alive, he or she wouldn't have time or attention to do anything else during the day. It is quite a serious and demanding task to sustain life, after all. Nevertheless, the subtlety of the mindfulness practice of sitting in silence and in stillness is that the practice is not about taking full control over the breathing, but only knowing or being aware that there is an activity of breathing going on at the present moment. This awareness can provide us with the anchor we need for observing the mind. The phrase letting go is used too often these days, almost to the point that we don't know what it really means anymore. Or the phrase goes into one ear and leaves out of the other ear right away without having any significant effect on our way of thinking. It is either because we don't actually know how to let go or we just don't want to. In any case, paying curious attention to the breath can give us a glimpse of what it feels like to learn to let go. While breathing in, do we notice that there is a slightly cool sensation at the tip of our nose? And while breathing out, is there a slightly warm sensation at the tip of the nose that we feel? If and when we are truly present with these sensations, we get a transient understanding of what it means to let go. In a sense, our ability to observe our breaths, even if it's temporary, makes us to be in tune and question who it is that is actually doing all the breathing. Without a question, we know that we are in charge when we choose to pause our breathing. We also know we are in charge when we choose to breathe in or out intentionally, long or short. But when we just watch the process of breathing and rest our attention on the awareness of the breath, we are letting go. Because in a way, we're just letting the breaths breathe and we're just allowing the breathing to happen naturally as it is.
Thank you. So that's the first half, and it's so compact, full of a relationship with the breath. That's one of the things that really jumped out at me, of just how much we do it all the time, but I've never, in your writing style, it's like, oh, you're getting to know this relationship, this awareness of this thing that we do all the time. But how come I've never looked at my breath in this way? But I'm glad that you have. So let's talk about that. You mentioned that the breath is related to the mind. And I know mindfulness can do that, but can you expand on that a little bit? You really jumped on that early on in the article of how there's a relationship with breath and the mind.
Yes, you're talking the word allow come to mind, because that's how I'm equating or drawing the parallel between the breathing and the mind. Because I cannot stop my mind. It goes on anyway, and it's nothing personal, And same thing with the breathing. So that's the framework and the parallel that I'm drawing.
So when you say that, I might have thousands of thoughts a day, and I might not be conscious of every thought that I have. It can be just as fleeting as it is coming in, where some of my thoughts I might be so intrusive and I perseverate or obsess about. Same thing with the breath.
Yes.
Yeah, that's neat. In your article, you mention that the breath can be seen as an activity happening on its own, without anyone consciously doing it. Can you elaborate on the idea of how it relates to our understanding of the mind?
Yeah, this is a difficult topic, but my intention, as I mentioned to you, Luke, before we start this recording, is to simplify it, to make it more practical. So it's all about freedom, it's all about being free of unnecessary suffering. So that's what observing the breath carefully has afforded me. So when I say attaining or getting to that mindset of this is an activity that is happening with or without my permission, that gives me so much freedom. One quick simplified example would be the fact that let's say I'm talking to you, Luke, And if I'm like trying to control everything that you're saying to me, that's too much work. So I say something to you, Luke, and I ask you a question, and before you say anything, I have to control everything that you say back to me. That's just too much work. Same thing with the mind and the breath, that it takes so much pressure off when I just like, oh, okay, I'm paying attention to what my breath is doing, as if I'm listening to you talking, Luke, you know, and it just helps me to see things as they are, you know. I hope that's helpful as of a simplification. And that's what I mean by watching it as an activity, nothing personal. It goes on as if I'm observing someone else doing their own thing.
How do you balance that?
Good question. Can you expand more on your question?
It's like the paradox of control, no control. We can hold our breath. And I don't mean to be morbid, but if I hold my breath underwater, and if I don't come up eventually, my breath is going to go, nope, it's time for a breath. Mm-hmm. There's this complete control or really no control. I can pay attention to it or I don't. It's going to happen. Like, how do you find that balance? Mm-hmm. I mean, I've something we do every day, so it just happens naturally in one sense, but this consciousness of this breath that you have, how do you balance it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it got me thinking too about my experience as a Buddhist is kind of colored, for lack of a better word, because I've been living here, and then I have involved with 12-step fellowship, and then learning about some of the teachers from the American Society of like American Buddhism and stuff. So yeah, my thinking is always evolving. But like the thing about the word balance, as you were saying, is that I'm at a point where it's not about like letting go and then attaining full enlightenment, but it's more about participation. The thing about the breath, to answer your question about the balance, is that I can participate. It's not like being passive and then like don't do anything about it, but it's more about I can ask, I ask and I listen, kind of like the 12-step version of prayer and meditation. And I find that to be kind of a playful activity with the breath and with the universe in a way. There are also some teachings where you ask your mind that, oh, I breathe in, but what's a comfortable way of breathing? You ask and then you listen. So is this long breath comfortable, or is a short breath better for this moment, for my mind activity and for my body right now? And then it's more about like give and take kind of thing. So that to me is a balance. It's an activity in and breath every time, but our life is different every time. Asking my mind, well, I'm feeling anxious right now, so what's a good breathing that I should do? And then letting the breath respond to that.
Once again, I just think of it as paradoxical, for lack of a better word, that if I pay attention to the sensations of the breath, it can help me cultivate a sense of letting go.
Yeah, that's the second paragraph that we were reading, right? The idea of letting go, observing the breath, being present with it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's entirely related to the three characteristics that I was mentioning in the beginning, the impermanent nature of it, that letting go is accepting that things are impermanent. And that's what I mean by the breath. My inability to let go comes from the fact that things are permanent, that I have this thing that will live like this forever. But the more we are careful with the detailed sensation of the breath, the more we become aware that things are always changing. Even the in-breath and the out-breath each time is so different. Things are always in flux. So when I accept that, it gives me that ability to let go, not to get fixed on a particular point.
So it's as much as it is you're letting go of your breath when it happens, you're being with the breath as it goes. It's as much metaphoric, symbolic, as it is real life letting go.
Yeah, and to be more practical too, this is very applicable to any kind of negative thoughts or anxiety, depression, resentment, any feelings that comes up. When I become fully present with it, not in a way of like I'm so tangled by it, but it's just the fact that, oh, this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives me that ability to let go because I prolong it by, oh, let me just pretend that this is not happening, or this should not be happening. And I prolong it by not accepting it. I don't know if it's just my perception, but this conversation is quite meditative in a way. I feel like we're at this zone where, I don't know, maybe it's the effect produced by talking about breathing, that it's insightful and kind of calming for me.
Well, I guess one more question on the concept of letting go. It's often used, but not always fully understood, and we're trying to articulate that right now. How does this practice of observing the breath help us gain a deeper understanding of letting go? And how does it connect to finding a sense of freedom? Because your acknowledgement and your explanation that you just gave, letting the breath go, I hear a sense of freedom in that.
Yeah. I mean, like it's more of that's why I encourage people to meditate, even if you feel like you're not good at it or whatever. It's just to start right away. That's the best way, because when it comes to these practices, it's more, everything is all experiential. So otherwise we're just using words and all like, abstract. But when you have the experience of watching the breath and being present with it, it becomes more substantial and also experiential. The concept that is equivalent to letting go is a thing about surrendering. That's all. That's also a pretty powerful term, surrendering. So if we apply that to breathing, how does it, maybe I'll ask this to the listener, that when you surrender to the activity of breathing, how does it feel like? Surrendering to your breath. You're just allowing it because life is going to exist. So that's what I mean by the freedom. That's surrendering to the fact that I'm breathing.
Hey listeners, we've got something extraordinary to share, a chance to reshape your journey no matter where you are. You're familiar with Zalmal's insights on our podcast, but there's more. Through the Recovery Collective, he offers life, mindfulness, recovery coaching, and meditation groups guiding you toward a fulfilled and mindful existence, no matter your location. Zal's journey from a Burmese Buddhist novice to a skilled practitioner equips him with timeless wisdom and contemporary strategies. Whether you're navigating life's shifts, seeking clarity, or pursuing self-awareness, Zal's coaching serves as a compass guiding you toward success. The best part? Zal's approach centers on your growth and empowerment. He equips you with tools to tap into your inner strengths for continuous evolution no matter where you are. Ready to take that next step in your personal growth journey? Connect with Zalmal and the Recovery Collective at 240-813-8135 from anywhere in the world. Investigating in your journey reaps immeasurable rewards. Let Zalmal guide you toward resilience, clarity, and empowerment no matter where life finds you. Now, let's transition back into our conversation. Stay tuned, stay curious, and keep your journey growing. We talked very briefly before we started recording on what you learned about, I don't know if it was in your yoga practice or not, about the inhale of the breath.
Yeah. I'm new to yoga, so I got a little too excited about all these new things that I'm learning about yoga, which is that I just read it somewhere, or maybe a yoga teacher explained it to me, that when we think about the activity of breathing, the effort that we're putting in is only when we breathe out. But when we breathe in, we're not actually breathing in. We're just creating space in the lungs for the air to comes in because of the atmosphere. There's already a pressure. Air is ready to come in. I just have to allow it. I'm actually putting more effort by not allowing it to come in. So when I let go, air comes in. And the effort that requires is to push it out.
So my upbringing is like, oh yes, so the rib cage and the muscles are just opening up and then the atmospheric pressure is going in. It's so bizarre to think of it that way. Because I've always assumed it like a suction of, sucking it in. But no, we're not doing that. It's kind of creating a a cavity and the pressure goes in. That's so wild to think of it that way.
Yeah, but I think to be precise, I think we also have that ability to do that too.
Sure.
Right, to
Yeah.
breathe it all in.
Yeah. Suck in air, literally.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, why don't you read the last two paragraphs of the article you wrote on the knowing breath?
Yeah. So the next part is that, as we already know, even if it is only in theory, there is freedom in letting go. But how far are we willing to let go? How badly do we want to be free? In a conventional sense, however, letting go implies a feeling of a loss. For example, we let go of a marriage and we lost it. We let go of a house and the house is gone. But in the grand scheme of letting go, these examples are just the tip of an iceberg. The difference can be pointed out if we apply the letting go idea to the process of breathing here. Quite obviously, when we let go of breathing, it's not like we lose our breaths and we die. It's not a loss, but it is not a gain either. It just is, only breathing. We do not lose anything. We're only letting it all happen the way it is meant to be. Wow, I went pretty far out there. I feel like, I don't know if people get it. It is not the world's most exciting thing for us to sit in stillness and in silence. Not only is it counterintuitive, but it also does sound quite boring, doesn't it? But as we anchor ourselves in the awareness of breathing, we get to know the true nature of the mind. And as we get to know the true nature of the mind, we get to let go and connect with the world in a way we've never known possible, because the truth of our existence is embedded in each moment of intuitive awareness. And in that awareness is where we truly know the peace and happiness we deserve and have been longing for. The end.
Anything you'd like to expand on based on what you just read? You read yourself.
I mean, the power of the present moment essentially is what stood out to me from that reading in reflection.
Yeah.
About just the fact that, like surrendering. Again, surrendering to the breath is also surrendering to the present moment.
And accepting. Surrendering and accepting. You said you felt like you got a little out there with that last piece. When we lose our breaths, we die. It is not a loss, but it is not a gain either. That's just pure acceptance. That's what I read from that.
Mm-hmm.
And how symbolic is that for everything in life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes, like when I meditate, I have these visual of this. Sometimes I have these experience of being able to look at me as an outsider. So if I think about it, when I'm breathing, it's like this individual on this earth who is given this task to observe the breathing. It's like a gift already, but also it's almost like a mystery, something but the cool thing about breathing is that it's a very ancient activity, right? If we think about it, it's been with us since the beginning of life for any kind of animal or any breathing animal, there's that respiration, taking and giving back, renewing. I have these images sometimes of like, oh, this is a good task that I am given, which is available. And there's that like peace and the freedom when we observe it that way, that, oh yeah, there's this breathing that I am assigned to. And I guess, in other traditions of like believing in a creator God, breathing is a very godly thing because it's part of the creation. So when you are in tune with that creation, you're actually in tune with the original creator of who you are. That's how I'm not, a Christian or anything, but like that's a model that I think of when I think about staying in tune with the breath. It's also staying in tune with God in a way, because this is what's creating us in each moment.
What do you think of there's a few languages that all have this parallel, that the Latin word for breath is spiritus, or spirit. The literal word for breath is spirit. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's also a term, life force, which is also translated in the yoga or Hindu, maybe even Buddhism as well, that that wording of anapana. Pana is Pali, I think, but the yogic term is prana, Prana. Pranayama, it's the yoga practice of in and out breath, you know. So maybe that's something equivalent to that of spirit, because breath is energetic. Like I'm allowing the life force to come in, you know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know your experience, and you talked about a little bit about we lose our breaths when we die, and a lot of us has been by our family members' bedside during their last breaths, and it's quite a visible experience. See someone go from conscious to subconscious, and their physical body change, and then the intensity of the breath that you see a person taking, and then people talk about the rattle breath right before someone dies, and so many people tell their loved ones, and they've accepted it's okay, you can go, you can move on now, whether it's God, heaven, afterlife, or whatever you want to believe, whether it's religiously or spiritually or personally. And I can't help but to think of, the intensity of the breath of my grandmother during her last breaths. And then, my dad and aunts and uncles, it's okay to go. And as soon as we leave, we go, okay, you guys have visited, and she left. But it's just why that comes to my mind. It's like, we don't lose anything. Yes, a physical being, a physical person, but we're only letting it all happen the way it is meant to be. The breath was there during the time it was meant to be. And whether the spirit moves on is just for me, a truly an accepting, almost comforting thing, that as she expires physically in this human form, that maybe the spirit and the breath went to where it needs to be, and I accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just me thinking out loud in this moment, and I haven't fully processed it, but I'm going to try to spell it out anyway, which is that the breath and the consciousness. So it's like the breathing activity is creating a soil or a ground for the consciousness to come in. I see that in reflection to what I've experienced recently. I have to follow HIPAA and professionally for my interpretation, but I can still share it without breaking any PHI, personal health information. I was helping a really big family with their grandfather. I think he was in a car accident, and I think his brain, they were like trying really hard to sustain his life, but his brain was so damaged already that he's gone. But then there's a breathing machine that is sustaining his life.
Sure.
So he was still alive, but his consciousness is gone. So like the family had to make a decision to unplug it. So it's almost like a mechanical thing. He's still breathing and he's still alive, but consciousness is gone, So like it just makes me think of that, because the other way around, right? Like the breathing comes in, you're alive, and then it creates a soil for the consciousness to come. And then the consciousness goes away, and then breathing still exists, but it's just a mechanical thing for him. He's still alive, but the spirit is not there anymore,
Yeah. It's almost when we lose the control of that, it's a mechanical thing. But then during meditation, it can be mechanical, or it can be a higher level of consciousness, potentially.
Yeah.
You're making me think deep, so another question or two for you.
Okay.
Sitting in stillness and silence may seem boring or even counterintuitive to some. How does anchoring ourselves in the awareness of breathing help us discover that true nature of the mind?
Yeah. Again, it is experiential. So I don't promote stillness and silence, but if you feel moved to do it, and you'll feel the benefit. But sitting in stillness and silence help me to remember what is available. And I think listeners can relate to that, because the opposite is true. Like when I'm busy feeling anxious, worry, not having enough time to get everything done that I'm supposed to be doing, rushing, or I should be somewhere else already, I'm late. Whenever I'm in that moment, I don't feel anchor. And the stillness and the silence is what I crave for. So like, for me, it's a contrast to a busy life. So that's what I mean by the anchor, that it is available and it's my true nature that I can always go back to. And it's also the, I sometimes I think of just like with this podcast, right? Like we can put the recording on and then it will be capturing the silence, but then we fill that in with the voice. So there can be an hour-long recording without no voice, So it's like that with the day too. That when I'm sitting in silence, it's that recording that is creating space that is always available, and I'm just adding worries and anxieties to it, which is by my choice. So like it's like a background, a contrast to what we are capable of and what we have access to. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well said. I guess I'll close with this question. In your article, you mentioned that through intuitive awareness, we can find peace and happiness that we deserve and have been longing for. Can you elaborate on how the practice of breath awareness can lead to a deeper sense of peace and happiness in our lives? I think you kind of touched upon that. But for the new meditator, or the one that has only had, guided meditations and not really focused on all things breath, how can it lead to a deeper sense of awareness, whether it's peace and happiness or not?
Yeah, I guess the term intuitive awareness is interesting, and we can unpack that. But what I was referencing to is pretty much the meaning of the word Buddha. There's a tradition, I'm not sure in Burmese tradition, but in Thai forest tradition, there's a practice where you meditate on the word Buddha, which is a variation of the word Buddha. So you can just repeat that. And Buddha means, it can mean to the historical Buddha, but the true meaning of Buddha is the one who knows, the knowing. That's also why I title it as the knowing breath, is that it's the true, I guess some Zen tradition or some Mahayana or some modern Buddhism refer to it as a Buddha nature that is within all of us, which is that intuitive awareness, So like, again, this is experiential, So when you get tapped into it, almost, I guess the westernized equivalent term is that God consciousness in a way. And that's what I mean by that intuitive awareness, where peace, heaven on the earth kind of thing is right here in this moment when I get tapped into that intuitive awareness, which is the knowing, the one who knows.
I sometimes tell my clients our feet are our smartest, wisest body part because they always know where they're at. But maybe I should start incorporating the wisdom of the breath and what that can tell us. The feet can ground us, but boy, that breath can ground us too. Is there any practical tips or techniques that the listeners can incorporate into their daily lives to develop a greater awareness of the breath and cultivate a sense of letting go? What would you recommend for them?
In this moment, the thought that comes to mind is a sense of belonging, which is where like the peace is sometimes. So like if you practice breathing, you're the one who's breathing, but it's also something universal. That's also the beauty of the breath, is that it's the most present thing that every living beings on this earth right now in this moment, although we're recording it, but like whoever is listening to later, this truth is true. That is an activity that is happening as long as we're alive, So it's a very uniting, practical way of looking at my existence, right? Because that otherness is gone when I am able to bring my mindfulness to that, this is an activity that I'm doing and everybody else is doing, and it gives me that connection with other living beings in that way.
I think there's 1,000 different techniques, but any that you can, one or two that you can share with us. For awareness of the breath.
Yeah, paying attention, bringing your awareness, just like it says in the reading too, about paying attention to that cooling and the warm sensation, breathing in, being aware of that. cool sensation, breathing out, being aware of that warm sensation.
Another one I learned from you, I had doing a group and started the group with a mindful breathing technique. And one gentleman said, "Luke, I've never been able to meditate in my life. I got the worst ADD, ADHD you've ever seen in your life. I can't sit still, let alone my leg shakes all the time." So I just gave him a breathing technique where when he did an inhale, he focused on the lower part of the lungs and it filled up to the middle. And notice when he inhaled from the top of his lung being full, and when he exhaled from the top of the lung and felt it to the middle and down to his deepest bronchial tubes at the very base of his lungs, and just felt the air escaping that and held it and did it again, lower, middle, upper. Just do that for 10 breaths in and out. Just lower, middle, upper, upper, middle, lower, and just focus on those 3 stages of the inhale and exhale. So we did that for a handful of minutes, and I certainly didn't hear him scuffling or leg shaking, but afterwards, as he was just being aware of his breath, and I worked in a drug and alcohol rehab facility at the time, and after I processed that with the group, he looked at me and he said, "Luke, I feel like I'm stoned." But the way I took that, and the group, shared their experiences and what they thought of his, is he was able to be aware and conscious of his breath. And as a result, it sounded like his brain waves, or his racing mind certainly was not as racing, and it sounds like his stress levels went down and he had some good, neurotransmitters and feel-good chemicals release as a secondary result of just having awareness of his breath. And this was someone that said, "There's no way I'll be able to quote-unquote meditate or have breath awareness." And that was just a really powerful story I'll never forget in my life. So when everyone says, "I can't meditate, I can't sit still," I said, let's just try a technique.
Yeah, that's your go-to example. Yeah. I do have one concluding thought, which is, again, this is a fun part for me because I feel like I'm not limited to Theravada Buddhism, although that's my background. But like the thing with, because, I've been in 12-step fellowship and living here and all these things. The thing about prayer, because in the 12-step, God of your understanding, right? And I do have that. And it's been just really fun because if I really believe in the concept of prayer, there is no shortage of that. So if I don't, they say, if you don't have the willingness, you can pray for willingness. And if you don't know how to pray for willingness, ask for the instruction how to pray. Like there is nothing that you cannot pray about, which opens so many doors. So like to connect that with the breathing too, that again, asking and paying attention. So like the thing about breathing is that if I believe in a higher power, a God of my understanding, I can petition to that power, help me bring my attention, or in equivalent terms in Buddhism, that mind is an organ, mind is a thing. And I can even treat my mind as a friend. So, hey, mind, can you give attention to my breathing right now? And then asking, and then listening, or paying attention to what happens. So it's a fun exercise for people who believes in God or who are more used to that kind of like prayer and meditation. That like ask your mind to pay attention to your breathing and see what happens.
I think you explained it perfectly, but expand on the mind as an organ so people can understand exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I'll use the same example, right? Luke, right in front of me, you are a person.
I'm a large organ.
Yeah, and you respond when I say things to you because you are a sentient being, and you hear me and you respond. So mind is like that too, that it is an entity of its own. It has causes and conditions from my childhood, growing up, my beliefs, things that I've seen, input, output. So there's already an organ. That's what I mean by organ, that there are mechanism in there that just happens without my permission. So it is on its own in a way, and I can step out of it. Almost like a friend or a trusted friend. I wanted to use that word. After I've trained the mind, it becomes like a trusted friend. So I can interact with that. which is also like for some people, they even like when they forget something, they ask their mind, can you bring to my attention the thing that I forgot about, or some people would ask their mind that, oh, I need to get up at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Can you remind me? It's almost like a computer.
It's like your smartphone.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, Zal, thank you for sharing about this article that you wrote and the knowing breath. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention before we close this up?
No, that covers it all. Okay. I hope you practice, whoever is listening, sit and pay attention to the breath.
Your mind can be an organ. You can even tell that smartphone to help you with your daily routine of breath awareness. Well, today we explored the profound practice of breath awareness and its transformative potential. As we reflect on our conversation, we are reminded of the inherent wisdom embedded within the breath. The breath serves as a powerful tool for self-exploration, allowing us to observe the interplay between conscious control and the natural rhythm of our own breath. Through the practice of breath awareness, we gain a glimpse of what it means to let go. By simply observing the breath, we surrender to its natural flow, experiencing a profound sense of freedom and connecting with the present moment. In the stillness and silence of breath awareness, we can even tap into the true nature of our minds, potentially. We encourage you, our listeners, to embark on your own journey of breath awareness. Take moments throughout your day to anchor yourself in the rhythm of your breath, to fully experience the sensations and presence that arise with each inhale and exhale. Allow the breath to be your guide, leading you to a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. Remember, the practice of breath awareness is a timeless tool always available to you. Embrace the power of the breath as a getaway to inner peace, clarity, and mindfulness. I'd like to express my gratitude to you all for sharing the wisdom and insights on the breath, just like you do every week in this podcast, but thanks for sharing your reading today.
Thanks for allowing me to.
Your words have provided us with a profound understanding of the transformative potential within each breath we take. And if you want to read it again, I'll make sure I'll have a link on there for you guys to check it out. And thank you guys, the listeners, for joining us on this journey into the depths of breath. If you found value in this episode, we invite you to share it with others who may benefit from the profound wisdom of knowing breath. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review, as your support and feedback seriously means a lot and can help us continue to explore meaningful topics and bringing you inspired content. If you're listening these last 30 seconds, then you can spend another minute or two for liking and commenting and sharing. That'd mean a lot to us. So until next time, may the knowing breath guide you to a place of presence, peace, and self-discovery. My name is Luke.
This is Zal.
See you next time.
See you.